fans, wherever you may be. Welcome back for another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. Join your host, Bill Alvstad, and co-host, sports writer and football analyst Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another edition of the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with Keith Myers, co-host. Welcome in, Keith. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's been a busy day in Seahawk world as they have cut their roster all the way down to 53 from 80. And there's a lot of names, a lot of intrigue, what's going on. But I think before we start that, we should jump into news that happened in San Francisco that happens to throw a wrench in Seattle's plans.
Yeah, yesterday, Jimmy Garoppolo decided to take an $18 million pay cut and go back to work for the San Francisco 49ers on a one-year deal, paying him $7 million to back up Trey Lance, and thereby throwing that wrench into Seattle's probable plans. I would say probable. We just don't know for sure, but it seemed like that's the direction that the franchise was wanting to go. Now they could still trade for him. There is a no trade clause in that deal, but it doesn't preclude Seattle from trying to acquire him anyway in a much more manageable salary at $7 million. I don't think San Francisco wants to trade him to Seattle, but anything could happen after week 2, after we face the 49ers. But yeah, so we're going into the season with Drew Lock and Geno Smith, Keith.
Yeah, and so with that, the no trade clause is also a no tag clause in the contract. So anyone who, if he does choose to waive his no trade because somebody offered San Francisco a boatload of picks, their team has no negotiation rights. There's no tag, which
so
drastically lowers his values.
Yeah, boatload would be throw him a 5th round pick maybe,
if they'll take it. The big thing for him though is because that's the range that I had heard about where Seattle was looking to pay him was $7 to $8 million on a one-year deal. He gets to come in, he would play.
I'm surprised.
Build his value and then go elsewhere. Yeah. The difference here is that if Trey Lance either struggles or gets hurt and Garoppolo plays, he could earn back almost all the money that he left on the table by signing the new contract. If he goes out and hits all these incentives, he can make like $24 million, which is just less than what he would have made if he on his old contract. So I think that is the reason why he's still in San Francisco, is because there was no upside to, this year, there was no upside to joining Seattle. He would get a chance to play and, rebuild his value and all of that. But he believes he's going to have that opportunity in San Francisco, whether it be through injury or ineffectiveness for Trey Lance. Garoppolo believes he's going to play. And if he does, he's going to get paid. And I think that and the no tag clause were the things that got him to stay in San Francisco.
Yeah. Well, the fact remains, Seattle, the 49ers wanted to trade him. 49ers made it clear that he wasn't going to be the starting quarterback. Trey Lance was going to carry this team going forward. And so, to then turn around and have him back, it seems like it's going to work. But, it's the NFL. It's a business at the end of the day. And so we'll see how that goes. He is the primary backup now, so if they did trade him, they would be looking for a backup as well in that market. I think Drew Lock for Garoppolo type of a trade would make a lot of sense for both teams at some point, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think that. I just don't think that San Francisco is going to trade with Seattle. They're not going to give Seattle their quarterback.
And the NFL. You know the NFL just as well as anybody else, Keith, and you know that these job openings do open up as the season progresses because quarterbacks don't stay healthy all year. And so he'd be the first man up for a team that is a contender that would want to have a legitimate quarterback come in and take over. I would imagine that he's ready to go.
So imagine if a team that has a legitimate quarterback and that goes down, So even someone like Aaron Rodgers. Would the Packers throw first round picks at San Francisco to get Garoppolo?
No, because you have no rights next year.
Yeah, but if let's say it's midseason, it's like you're 6-0 and Rodgers goes down and you're looking at, we have a special team. We could make a run for the Super Bowl, or we could not make the playoffs if we do nothing.
I would maybe throw Jordan Love into that equation as opposed to draft picks, but that's, we'll see.
I don't think Jordan Love has the value.
Yeah, I know, but you're not going to get a first round pick for a rental just to, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe.
We've seen it in the past.
Now,
granted, it was the Raiders. It was Al Davis. Maybe that doesn't count.
I could see a third round pick or something, but that'd be a steep price for a 10 game type rental situation. I'm just speculating, but yeah. So all right, so we got a lot to talk about on this.
What I was saying when I said that it's happened in the past. It's Carson Palmer. That's the name, and that was a rental.
So how'd we do? I'm curious. How'd we do on our prediction show versus how the roster? Yeah, I think that we did okay.
It wasn't terrible. I don't think it was as good as we normally do.
I think that between us both, we did pretty good. I think you had some hits, I had some hits and misses, etc. Let's talk about it though. So we didn't make any mistakes up front. Quarterback room is Geno Smith. He's starting quarterback with Drew Lock as the backup. Running backs, Rashad Penny, Kenneth Walker. Ken Walker did make the active 53 right out of the gate. There was speculation that he might start the year on IR.
He might start the year on IR. If you're going to be able to come off of
that's
IR,
true. That's very true.
You have to spend basically 24 hours on the initial 53, and then they can put you on IR. So that might be where they open up another roster spot a day from now. But as of right now, he is on the active roster.
And if they do, it's probably for another running back because they would then only have 3. Rashad Penny, Travis Homer, DJ Dallas round that out. Obvious cuts, Josh Johnson and Darwin Thompson. Darwin Thompson might be a candidate to be on the practice squad or come back. Or
return if Walker goes. Yep.
Right. And that would be like a 4-week deal if that happened. Wide receivers, interesting, Keith. You nailed this situation really with the pretty much, right? I think
I'm looking at the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think this is exactly what I said was going to happen.
This is exactly. So you predicted that Freddie Swain would be cut. And I was like, I don't know.
Tariq Young would make it. I also said that both Penny Hart and Marquise Goodwin would make it, even though they're essentially the same player. I didn't feel good about it, but I still predicted.
Yeah, no, this is actually one of the ones that you hit right on the nail. And Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, Marquise Goodwin, Eskridge, Young, and Penny Hart, they elected to move on from Bo Melton, their 7th round draft pick. They want to bring him back on the practice squad. Cade Johnson, another notable name. Our Sega Whiteside is on there as well. Kid we picked up in the Philadelphia Eagles trade. Yeah. And then Freddie Swain. That trade, by the way, just didn't cost us anything. I'm just making that clear. And then Freddie Swain, I think, is the big surprise here as far as entering the offseason is concerned. You couldn't have predicted this.
No, he was the number 3 receiver last year. He looked decent, and you'd only expect him to get better. He's still a young player, but then did not work out for him in training camp this year. Did not have a good camp, did not look good at any point.
He's still eligible to come back. Another team, but somebody might look at him and see some upside, might pick him off here on the waiver wire.
Yep.
But
he's a guy that I would actually expect to be claimed just because people are going to look at his NFL production, not promise or whatever, just the fact that he was productive last year and be like, yeah, we need another receiver, and he's sitting there. I think he's probably going to get picked off.
There's some interesting names out there on the roster cuts throughout the
really
league. And we can talk about that a little bit if you want. Tight ends, as predicted, Noah Fant, Disley, Parkinson, Cade Brewer, Tyler Mabry were released. Charles, the offensive line kind of ended up exactly the way I thought it would.
Me too.
And you too. You pretty much nailed the entire offense.
which is weird.
But I had I had 24 players. If you add Nick Bullard to the roster, it's 25. Charles Cross, Jake Curhan, Stone Forsythe, Abraham Lucas, Damian Lewis, Gabe Jackson, Phil Haynes, Austin Blythe, Kyle Fuller. We have 2 rookie tackles who are going to start in the NFL on week 1, Keith. That's the big news out of this this roster.
Charles Cross and Abe Lucas are both going to start, and they both looked good. I mean, I know Cross had the one game with all the penalties. I think that wasn't good, but when he didn't get penalized, his actual on-field play was good. And Abe Lucas was good through the whole preseason. The 2 of them, that there's so much promise there. That's really the biggest thing to come out of the draft. And there's lots of good things to come out of this draft for Seattle, but getting both your starting offensive tackle, that's unheard of.
Yeah. And it's just the beginning. They haven't even played a game yet. And so we get a chance to see all the growth along with the growing pains too. So we'll see how that goes. I would imagine it's going to be a little rough now and again, but I think overall, Keith, there's just so much to be excited about. You just put up with whatever you're going to deal with in the first 10 games or so to kind of get this thing going. And then after that, you should be pretty well set.
So I nailed the offense. I think you said that. And I'm looking through, I actually did. Like these are the predictions I made. The defense, on the other hand, I was not close.
Yeah, I got a little closer. I got a little closer on the defense.
I was not.
Yeah, I was closer in the number of linebackers. I was closer in a few players, but I also had a couple of misses too, because there were a couple of players that just kind of came out of left field on this roster.
But you were still pretty close.
Defensive line, I kind of nailed that with Al Woods, Brian Monet, Shelby Harris, Puna Ford, Quentin Jefferson, LJ Collier makes the initial 53, and Miles Adams. We thought it maybe was an or Miles Adams, LJ Collier, both made it. However, Collier's been hurt for like 2 or 3 weeks with this elbow thing and a couple other injuries. And there is speculation, including from Bob Candata, that LJ Collier is only on the 53 for today and making the initial 53 until he's eligible to be put on injured reserve for return with designation for return. And then the team would elect to make another move. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, it fits. I mean, this is if you remove Collier, that's the line that I predicted. It is the line that you predicted with Collier. And I think, moving him, so you have 6 guys and a roster spot to use with someone else. And knowing that you can bring Collier back if you need him mid-season and he's healthy, it's a good move for the team. So if we move to linebacker, this is where I really blew it.
This is wild, really.
So Jordan Brooks, Darrell Taylor, Uchenna Nwasu, Boye Mafe, Cody Barton, Nick Bellore, Alton Robinson. I think those were we all kind of knew those guys were going to make the roster. John Radigan went to the PUP. Tyreek Smith went to IR, and he went to IR now, so his season is over. He can't come off. Cut were Vi Jones, which is surprising, given how much the coaching staff's raved about him, and he looked good.
This could be the move for LJ Collier.
Yeah. Or they may be trying to get him onto the practice squad.
Or there's another waiver wire player out there that the Seahawks will try to claim.
So he is on, he got cut. Tanner Muse got cut. Joel DeBlanco got cut. I had all 3 of those guys making the roster just for linebacker depth. They're all out, joining Lakem Williams. John Radigan also made the PUP. And then Joshua Onujiogo. I should have let you say it. Made the roster, which is kind of surprising. He was not on my radar as a guy that looked like a rostered player. Also, admittedly, I wasn't really looking. And I was expecting Vi Jones to make it. So, and
I was too, just because of the lack of depth at middle linebacker. Now, Vi Jones made the team didn't look at him as being ready yet to be a middle linebacker for this team, just because he's undersized.
He's undersized for that role. expecting him to come off blocks, like strip blocks, shed them in the middle and can still make it upfield to make a tackle when you're that small. I mean, you're 220, you're gonna have a hard time, getting off a block of a 330 guard. And so they're going to want him to put on some weight, put on some muscle, get bigger. And whereas Onujiago I blew that again.
No, you didn't. You nailed that actually.
Oh, okay. Onujiago.
Good job.
I think he's more ready as a middle linebacker. I just think he's got a lower ceiling. So I kind of expected Vi Jones to make it. And honestly, I thought he was behind Joel DeBlanco in trying to make the roster at that same job, the same role. And maybe even Tanner Muse, because Muse looked really good in this last game. Made a lot of really key plays.
Yeah, we haven't talked about the practice squad yet. And on Wednesday, after the waiver wires is cleared, teams then have 24 hours to make up a 16-player practice squad. And I would imagine a lot of these players that we've been talking about, a lot on offense, and then these defensive guys, especially this linebacker room, you're going to see maybe 2-3 guys out of this group come back onto the practice squad. Tanner Muse is a good candidate. DeBlanco and Vi Jones, I believe, maybe even Aaron Donker, because they get the exemption for him. So it'd be a no-brainer to add a 17th guy in Aaron Donker if he's out there. And I agree with you in your assessment. Didn't really know too much about Uno. Is it Ono Giago?
Onu Giogo.
Giogo. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, we'll get it down if he hangs.
We will
on the roster for a while.
We'll get it eventually. It's just, look, he made the roster. We've had about a half an hour of looking at it to try and get his name right. I will get it right.
Yes. The more we say it,
you're going to need to give me another day.
So, that's an interesting group, but 8 total players, which we talked about the other day on the prediction show. I was kind of going, I see 8 because I think they wanted to keep an extra defensive back. And you were like, I'm not sure. I've got 10, not including Nick Bellure. And that was kind of the difference there.
So really they've got 7 linebackers on the roster.
Yeah.
That's
not including Nick Bellure.
That won't change.
That's what I had. That's what I had.
Yeah,
like
and
on the prediction show.
That, which, like I said, you got it. Like you had the defense set up. This won't stay. They are playing a 3-4, which means 4 of those linebackers are on the field, and they have 3 total backups, and one of which is a special teams guy who never plays defense.
I see the fallacy at this point. It
won't stay. Yeah.
Right.
But we do have a couple of guys that are going to land on injured reserve. There's going to be a couple of roster spots. They're going to bring either one of these guys back, or they're going to get a guy off waivers or a vet from another team. They will get someone in to fill out that linebacker room.
Well, I'm thinking this whole LJ Collier thing really opens a roster spot up to scan that waiver wire and get the best linebackers in possible to back up Jordan Brooks and Cody Barton. You had mentioned off the air before the show that Nuasu you thought would be the primary backup at middle linebacker because of the depth that we have on the edge. He could slide over. You bring in a guy like Alton Robinson in to pair with Darrell Taylor, and that would be all set up then at that point. But it's pretty thin nonetheless, and you're going to want to add to that room. Now, just a reminder for folks: the practice squad is 16 players. You can bring up, I think now, 3 or 4 guys off the practice squad, and you can bring up the same guy more than twice now. I think it's like 3 or 4 times throughout the season, back and forth. So they do have some flexibility there at this position group if they need to do that. It's not optimal because you can get guys picked off there, and you spend time coaching these guys up, and they're part of your roster, and all of a sudden a team picks them off. So you got to be careful. Let's talk about safeties and corners, because this is another interesting group.
So let's do corners first, because I had the right number. I had 5, but one of the wrong guys. You had
they actually kept 6.
I had the wrong number, but the right guys. You had the right guys. No, you had the right number, but the wrong guys, because I didn't have time to read. The big one. there was a sentence there that I knew was going to work, and I bundled it so badly that nobody knows what I'm talking about.
Well, they kept 11 defensive backs, which is interesting.
Yeah,
because and there's two names that Seahawks fans have become familiar with that are no longer on the roster, which is the big story out of this. Well, there's a couple big stories, but the big cut story was Marquise Blair. We both decided the team was going to move on from Marquise Blair. At least you did, I believe. I was kind of still hanging on, trying to figure out a way that Marquise Blair is on the roster.
We both still had him on the roster.
Oh, okay.
I thought he was going to make it. I thought he'd be like the 51st guy out of 53. I wasn't. I mean, he's down on the depth chart, but for him not to make the roster is, we didn't predict that. And the bigger, or the other name in here that got cut is Justin Coleman.
Yeah,
the former standout slot receiver in Seattle. He left. Played for a couple of different teams, came back this year and lost his job to Kobe Bryant, who's just been better. But the more surprising thing isn't just that he lost his job as a starter. He lost his job as a backup to John Reed.
Yeah. And Josh Jones, essentially. I mean, Josh Jones has that roster diversity. The team elected to keep Joey Blount, which is one of two undrafted rookie free agents on this roster now. The John Reed situation, Mike Jackson, that nobody kind of really thought, initially in February or March was going to be on this roster come roster cut downs, and he's there as well. And then to get two rookie starters out of the draft again at this position group, Keith, is crazy to me.
Yep,
you might as well call Kobe Bryant a starter, because in that nickel spot, he's going to play about 65% of the snaps. And have a key role in this defense. And then Tariq Woolen is the big story out of this cut down and preseason, because it looks like, man, he's been the starter for like 3 weeks. There's just no way I think they start the season with Artie Burns out there. But Sidney Jones and Tariq Woolen are going to start at corner for the Seattle Seahawks, Keith.
I think Artie Burns will play. I think there'll be some rotations with Tariq Woolen, so they can continue to work with him, coach him, and not expect him to just go out there and man aside for, an entire game, all those snaps as he continues to learn. So I think both those guys will play. Sidney Jones is ready to go, and he's going to start on the other side. And then, to get two guys out of this, and Mike Jackson looked really good. He was a guy that was practice squad last year, came up, played a couple games, got injured and disappeared, and he came back really strong. And then don't forget, Trey Brown starts on the PUP. He was a starter last year until his injury. A huge surprise in how well he played as a rookie. He will be back at some point after week 6, and that's another good player to add to a fairly deep cornerback room. Yeah.
Well, you got two rookies in there, and that's, it's they really hit the jackpot with Tariq Woolen being ready this year, as opposed to, kind of coming along and being ready the second half of the season or next year as a developmental project. And all of a sudden he's not a project at all. He's ready to go. Huge news. The other big news, of course, is Marquise Blair, second round pick 4 years ago, and played a total of 7-8 games, and just really couldn't get on the field with injury concerns. And then this year just didn't play well. Couldn't wrap up tackling. His technique was all discombobulated, and
he looked like he hadn't played football in 2 years.
He just got outplayed, Keith, by Josh Jones, and turns out Joey Blount. They took the upside of the undrafted rookie free agent Joey Blount to be in the safety room, and they're looking at Josh Jones as kind of the key cog factor for this safety room. And you've got Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs, but the diversity that Jones provides you on the back end, especially at free safety, allows the team to have Adams closer to the line of scrimmage, gives them some options on the back end with 2 high safety looks and so forth. I like it. I like the youth, and I like the direction and the physicality and the speed that this defensive back group has.
Yeah, Adams and Diggs pretty much didn't play in the preseason, and they kind of metered both of them because they were coming back from surgeries during training camp. And because of that, Josh Jones was the best safety in practice and in the preseason by a wide margin. Like, I still think Marquise Blair, if he, can continue to get back into what he was,
he may be a practice squad guy too.
Can be an impact player in the NFL, but he isn't right now. Josh Jones is. And Josh Jones is a guy who was a second-round pick from the Packers and flamed out there and ended up in Seattle.
I read a really interesting article today, Bob Condotta, I believe, on the journey that Josh Jones has had in the NFL. And apparently it was discovered that he had some thyroid issues that were impacting his ability to stay on the field, as far as just being tired. Elevated heartbeat type stuff was a thing for him for a while there. He got that corrected. He actually had his thyroid glands removed, went on some medication instead.
Wow.
He's been a completely different player since that happened. And Seahawks are the beneficiary there with a player that's ready to go. High draft pick there. So you've got Adams, Diggs, and Jones, all high draft picks, all good quality players. One of the best safety groups all around if Adams can stay healthy, especially in the NFC West.
If Adams doesn't stay healthy, the fact that they've got Josh Jones there ready to play, as good as he's been and as athletic as he is and as versatile as he is, I feel much better about what if Adams continues to get hurt, because you've got a starting caliber player ready to jump in. I mean, you have Ryan Neal too, who has filled in great when he's had to come on and play for Adams the last couple of years. But he's a backup who's really versatile and can do a lot of things, and there's not a huge drop off. But Jones is a starting caliber safety right now. So it definitely makes this Jamal Adams experiment a little easier to swallow if it goes south.
All right. Some other, I don't even know if I want to go into notable league cuts around the league. There's really not a lot that are going to fit, what the Seahawks are doing. I didn't see any really good linebackers out there yet. Interesting.
Are there any kickers?
I don't know. I don't have the full list. I just wrote down some notable guys, and that was like 3 hours ago. So that was before even all the cuts were in.
Yeah, because that's one of the things that's interesting to me, because Myers made the team.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I talked about this the last couple of weeks, that he is kind of a bubble player given his huge contract, and that if they can find someone they believe can do the job just as well on the waiver wire, so they're paying him, $750,000 instead of $4.5 million, they'll pull that trigger. They really will. So that's, I'm curious to see where that goes.
The team, the interesting thing about the timing of the cut downs, and then Seattle's 10th, I believe, overall on the waiver wire. So if they put in a waiver claim, they've got to go through 10 possible teams to be awarded. So that's pretty high, actually, especially when you're talking about specific groups, position groups. There's a good chance if Seattle puts in a claim that they would get that guy. Are there any position groups that surprised you? Are there any moves that kind of made you stop in your tracks?
It's really the linebacker group. That they've got 7 linebackers on the roster. 4 of them will be on the field. There's no depth there. You've got 3 middle linebackers and 4 outside linebackers, and then a special teams guy that just does not belong on the field as a defensive player because he's not good. And so you've got seven viable linebackers. Typically, teams that run a 3-4 keep 9 to 10.
And the last 3 are Nick Bellore, Boye Mafe, and Joshua Inujugo. And that's 3 players that are likely not to see the field too much. Now, Boye Mafe is going to be a situational pass rusher.
Boye Mafe
he's not ready he's not ready to be a 3-down player, though, is what I'm saying.
No, he's not. But he will get plenty of snaps. You'll see him all the time out there. But the other guys aren't likely to see the field at all.
Yeah,
that you mentioned.
The other one to watch, or the 2 positions to watch, I think, are running back with Ken Walker. Is he ready to go either week 1 or week 2? If he was ready, projected to be ready week 2, they may not make a move here. But if he's not, and the team feels like he needs to go sit on IR for 4 weeks, that would be an option there. But they would need to go find somebody. You can't go into the season with 3 running backs. And then wide receiver, Penny Hart and Tariq Young. Penny Hart looks like he's probable to be like a kick returner, punt returner as well, unless Ridge, they feel like he's ready to go and is 100% healthy.
Well, and DJ Dallas returned kicks last year and looked good doing it. So
that's very true. The interesting thing for me on the wide receivers is Goodwin and Eskridge really didn't play very much. Eskridge played a handful of snaps in that last game. And then Goodwin didn't play at all in the preseason. And he's likely now the third wide receiver in this group, unless they go out in the waiver wire. I know that there's a few different wide receivers out there that are getting cut and available. So that would be interesting to watch. Although I do believe that they are really high on Tariq Young and want to keep him around. So
yeah, I think if they can get him to catch the ball a little better, they've got something special. Note that DK Metcalf had drop problems as a rookie as well. So not as bad, but
so how excited are you on this draft class, Keith?
I am really excited. I mean, we knew after the draft, you and I both were like, we were on this. This is draft class. It's going to piss people off in the fan base, but it's going to be really good. And I think both things are true. Nobody liked it right away.
What do you mean?
I mean, there's so much, like, people hated this draft class. They didn't like taking a running back in round 2.
That was the big thing.
Why do you not take one in round 4? And then to double up all these positions when there were players at other positions where you could build out the rest of the roster rather than 3 positions. People didn't like it, and I understand all their points. And I'm not as big of they never draft a running back high. I don't think you draft one in the first round. I think that's kind of silly, but they drafted one in the second round and they drafted a really good one.
And a third pick overall, which, is right in line with, especially given the idea of what they want to do with their run game. I think that makes a lot of sense.
But so they did that. Then they got both starting offensive tackles, which is like the first time since 1980, I think I read.
And not just starting tackles. It kind of sounds like, well, they're just starters. These are actually really good quality players. I mean, that really did a great job in the preseason that you're excited about the future for. Abe Lucas even had graded out higher than Charles Cross in the preseason. I mean, I'm just excited. And you didn't anticipate the physicality of Abe Lucas. You could watch him on film, but he was always dropping back into protection. And so he wasn't being aggressive necessarily as a tackle at Washington State. And to watch him go out and pancake, 2 or 3 guys every single game in preseason was a joy to have somebody.
It wasn't just third stringers and guys that aren't going to make rosters and going to be selling insurance in a week. He was out there with the starters in the first series and was just mowing people over. Like, he dominated, and it was surprising and awesome. Yeah. So to get both of those guys, both the starting cornerbacks, both the starting offensive tackles, those were the 2 weakest positions on the roster heading into the draft, and they got 2 starters at each of them.
And then
you've got phenomenal draft.
You've got the high rotation guys in Boye Mafe and Ken Walker, and that's 6 guys that are going to make a huge impact in their first year on this roster.
Tariq Young very well could as well, because the wide receiver depth after the top 2, it's shaky, and he's going to get a chance to play.
Yeah, especially, with Eskridge's injury concerns. Goodwin's been injured, all offseason. Tariq Young could come out and make a splash, and Penny Hart's there as well. But, the upside with Tariq Young is really intriguing. I would imagine he does get an opportunity to show himself, eventually in this thing. I'm just looking around here, just looking for anything else that might be interesting. I think the big thing here is it definitely looks like, barring any unforeseen situation that we just can't predict, that Geno Smith is going to be the quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks in 2022. Now that he's in, it looks like we're going to ride this thing. I'm going to back him. Let's let Geno have the keys. Let's see what happens. Give him an opportunity. He's going to have all first string offensive line with him. He's going to have the running game with Penny and Walker. He's going to have his big weapons out there now, and Tyler Lockett and Metcalf. So it's going to be a little different. You're not going to have so many drops as you've had prior. Hopefully they get Noah Fant and Disley more involved in the offense. So this thing should potentially smooth out for Geno and give him at least the best opportunity to be successful. And that's all you can really ask for. And we'll see if he takes the reins and does it. History has shown that he hasn't quite made it up to that point, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen. I'm just, and I want to be supportive. I want to give him the same opportunity I give every other player on the roster to be successful. I'll be rooting for him and cheering for him. Anyway,
I have extremely low expectations. I expect him to be terrible, but I expect I will be ecstatic if I'm wrong. I will be the first to admit it. I want him to be successful because him being successful means the Seahawks are successful. That's absolutely what I want. I don't see it. I just honestly don't believe in him. But that doesn't mean I'm not rooting for him.
Yeah. And I would say that the team, believes in him. I mean, what else are they going to do? You've got an offensive coordinator that believes in him. You've got a head coach. You've got the players that are rallying around him, Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. I guarantee you, and they probably mean it if you ask them, how do you feel about Geno Smith? They'd be like 100% all in, guaranteed. He's going to make the throws. That's just the way it is. They're a team. It's the NFL. He's a professional. He's expected to step up and make this happen. So we're going to find out. Now the expectation, as you know, Keith, the expectation is not high, which is good. You don't want to have too high of expectations with a situation like this. I think you want to try to be as realistic as you can. We're going to find out about that as we kind of move forward in the next couple of weeks before our first regular season kickoff. We're going to have a schedule prediction show. I wanted to also let everyone know coming up, we're going to have guests, Dan Viennes, and hopefully Dana O'Gorman. Haven't been able to make contact with her from Our Turf Football, the new podcast host of the Field Goals podcast over at the Field Goals website. So congratulations to those guys.
They were the Seahawkers.
They're not doing the Seahawks. I was mistaken last time. Brandon Schultz is stepping away from the Field Goals podcast. But he's maintaining his role with Seahawks, which he's had forever. I think 10 years now, something like that.
So the two of them are taking over the Hawk Blogger.
No, the Field Goals podcast. So there's a Field Goals podcast as well as the Seahawks podcast. There's two different shows.
New. I'm always confused.
There's two different shows, and they've got the local Seahawks show on Field Goals.
Cool. Whatever. I don't care where they are. The two of them are great.
Yes.
I mean that completely.
And good humans.
I may not know which which spot is the right one, like where they're at, but they are really good.
Yeah.
Podcasters. They're great people. I love them to death, and I know they will be successful. So, there's that.
So we're going to have them on as soon as possible. Hopefully, possibly by the end of the weekend or first of the week, we'll have a show for you guys with those guys as guests. We'll have free range conversation as well as talking about the roster, obviously, and the quarterback position and all things Seahawks. So that'll be great. And then we've got any other news that comes up. We'll be recording 3 shows a week going forward as we move through the season. So we'll have a post-game show, a preview show, and in the middle of the week, we'll kind of have a wild card show where we stick to the topics of the day and highlight some of the players that we want to talk about and all that kind of stuff.
We have to stick to the topics. We're not good at that. We're really not that good at it.
We try. We just kind of go off. We start good. We
always do.
Our intentions are good, but when you don't have any notes, we're not operating on a script. No. I don't know if you've been following us for 347 shows now, you probably realize that, but we're not operating on any written dialogue prompts or anything like that. So sometimes we do kind of go off a little bit.
So, a couple wide receivers. I'm just like or just players in general. As I'm scanning through, um, Josh Gordon.
Yeah,
Remember him?
I just wrote his name down just right before we went on.
But perhaps more importantly, from the same team, Danny Shelton, nose
I saw
tackle,
that too. Yeah,
pass rushing nose tackle, might be a chance for him to come home and revive his career. And wide receiver Corey Coleman as well. Like that's another name, all from the
there's
Chiefs.
wide receiver Preston Williams is out there. Wide
Yeah.
receiver Willie Snead. Tight end OJ Howard, who the Seahawks have been rumored to be sniffing around the last 2 or 3 years, is out there. Sony Michel, Philip Lindsay, Keith, running back. Philip Lindsay might be available out there.
He
Kenyon
is out
Drake
there.
is another one that the Seahawks have been rumored to be kind of attracted to because he had the size and the weight.
He's a little long in the tooth at running back.
You know who the surprise cut is for me is Alex Leatherwood, number 17 pick overall in the 2021 draft. The Las Vegas Raiders cut Alex Leatherwood at offensive tackle.
Yeah, that's really surprising. Not gonna lie, that's just like, that's crazy.
Somebody they might be attracted to in that was cut out of the Minnesota Vikings camp was quarterback Kellen Mond, who I think was at Texas A&M quarterback from 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony
I'm going
Harris,
through
safety.
As I scroll through, I am looking at all the quarterbacks just with no expectation, but hoping that one of these comes along and I go, ooh, they should go grab them, put them at backup behind and cut Drew Lock. And then when they eventually get tired of watching Geno lose games for him, they could try to play him and see what they've got, but we'll see.
Now be careful of the people that love Geno Smith on this show. We do have a few, and they will come after you on YouTube. I've been defending you because you don't go onto YouTube and answer questions. So I've been kind of getting on there and taking care of those guys for you. But if you keep going, they're going to hunt you down and spank you, man.
I get that the people who like Geno talk about that he never has really gotten a fair chance because he had to play for Rex Ryan in the Jets, and he's just never gotten on the field since then and all of that. And I understand, and I will give you all of that. My draft evaluation of him was as a career backup. My assessment of him in New York was that he was going to be a career backup. He's been a career backup. And what I saw from him last year and every preseason and every training camp that he's been in Seattle is a guy that looks like a career backup. There's nothing wrong with being a career backup. Will have made a ton of money and will still be able to walk at the end of his career, unlike a lot of starters. Because he won't have all the hits and the knee injuries and everything. I just don't see him being good. That's just me.
Yeah, I mean, all the stats and everything point as to him being a league average or below league average quarterback. There's nothing wrong with that. Like you said, you can make money in the NFL. You can be a good quality backup, and you can come in and do your job. For 1, 2, 3, 4 games a year or less, and that's fine. Now he's poised to enter the season as a starting quarterback in the NFL. Expectations are just higher. And so when expectations are higher, you expect them to rise to a new level. And that may or may not be possible for Geno Smith based on track record and history and everything accounted for. It doesn't look like it's possible, but of course anything, can happen. But if you compare him just to the last two main starters the Seahawks have had in the last 20 years, Matt Hasselbeck and Russell Wilson, he's not that. He's just not. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just is what it is. He doesn't elevate to that level. And we'll see how that impacts games. Winning games at the end is really the key in this league. As you know, there's a lot of one-score games in the NFL. And if the Seahawks are within a score at the end of games and you give the ball to Geno, how confident are you as a fan or as a coach or as his teammates? are you in Geno being able to lead the team consistently on game-winning drives? And so far, he hasn't proven that he's able to do that.
Nope.
And so Keith's not wrong there. It's just, some people think that we hate Geno. We don't hate anybody.
No.
Number one, if you followed the show for the last 6-7 years, we don't hate anybody. We want success. Just like Keith mentioned, we want people to be successful for this team, everybody that's on the Seahawks roster. But, you also need to be realistic at some level, especially us. That's our job. We're here to, not have Homer hats on 100% of the time, although we frequently do.
Yeah, we're kind of bad about that.
Yeah, but we also try to see the realistic side of things as well. And so I'm trying to be optimistic. I'm an optimist, in general, and I'm trying to have an optimistic side about looking at this quarterback situation as we enter the season. And that's where I'm at. I'm optimistic, and I want Geno to succeed. He's going to have every opportunity afforded to him for a professional to have to go out and be successful. And I hope he is. I do. And just like you, I want him to be successful, because if he's successful, so goes the team.
So, yeah. Yeah.
So
that's the key. That's the key is if he's successful, the team is. So I want him to be successful.
Yeah. Well, let's leave it there. Yeah. So good show. I think we did good on our predictions. Pretty happy with the overall roster. There's a couple of situations I think that will hopefully work themselves out in the next couple of weeks as far as weaknesses. And we'll just leave it there, and we'll come back and we'll talk about the adjustments as they come up. The next show will probably evolve around practice squad and whatnot. And then
there will be more moves. So this roster is set for this second.
Yes.
But there will be players signed, players claimed off waivers, and they will change the roster. We'll have guys that made the roster that will end up on IR, but they had to make the roster so they can come off the IR mid-season. The roster is not set. It's never fully set, right? It changes throughout the season. This is just where it's at right now.
Yeah, and particularly right now, it's not set. We've got a couple weeks before the season. The waiver wire, you just had, excuse me, like 750, 800 players cut across the NFL. So there's a lot of players available that John Schneider can evaluate and compare to his own roster. That's how they scout. They're comparing them to their own guys, and if somebody's more appealing, they'll go out and get them. That's just the way it works. All right. Find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NWC Hockey. You know where the show's at. Find us on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you hit the subscribe button. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NWCHawk, Keith is at Myers NFL, and the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.